Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the BenQ Mobius EX2710Q gaming monitor. I'm going to go over the pros and the cons and my own real life experience that I've had with this monitor. And if at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. I do got you guys. But let's jump into the review. Now this is a 27-inch 1440p monitor. This has a good PPI or pixels per inch of about 109. That means text is going to be clear and crisp, and games are definitely going to be crispy. Now this is a flat IPS panel, which means it's going to be prioritizing viewing angles, wide color gamut, and ghosting. All right, let's talk refresh rate and variable refresh rate. This thing hits 165 Hertz, which is good. It's keeping with the industry standard of 165 Hertz. That is the new 144 Hertz. Now, this does have a little bit of a quirk with the refresh rate. We're gonna go into that more when we get to the color section, so keep that in mind. But let's talk about VRR, or variable refresh rate. This thing has FreeSync Premium, which is nice, and it also has motion blur reduction, which is kind of cool. Not all monitors have that, and I will note, basically not seeing any screen tearing. In this day and age, screen tearing on a gaming monitor is kind of crazy. Most of them nowadays, especially one of this stature and this price, just don't have screen tearing. And if they do have it, it's very, very little. And that's what this monitor is. Never really seeing screen tearing on this monitor. All right, brightness. This is where the quirks begin. Now, the typical brightness of this monitor is pretty bad. It is 250 nits, but hold on there is a bit of a quirk with it. This has HDRI, which is HDR intelligence. It is pretty cool, and I thought it was gonna be kind of annoying, but it's not, and let me explain what it is. So basically in HDR mode, when you turn HDR on in Windows, this thing gets to a peak brightness of 400 nits, and it pretty much stays there most of the time. So when HDR is on, there is no problem with brightness, so I completely give a pass to brightness, and let me explain why. So first of all, HDRI is basically a sensor inside of the monitor that will then adjust the HDR, right? It will adjust the monitor dependent on the room's light and a bunch of other things. Not only will it adjust things like brightness, it will also adjust warm and cool tones. You can see this actively doing it dependent on what you're doing, and honestly thought it was gonna be annoying because most of these like ambient light sensors are super annoying and I hate them. This, on the other hand, is quite nice. And honestly, if you get this monitor, you're gonna be using it a lot. Now, I will say, the reason I give this a full pass is because of, and we'll get to the color gamut later, but this can be legitimately used as a very color accurate, edit YouTube videos, edit photos pretty professionally, which is awesome. Now, when you're doing things like that, if you want to do it in the most color accurate way, you're not going to want to go over 250 nits anyway. But while you're in game, color accuracy really isn't, our priority. We want it to look pretty and awesome. So when you're in HDR, it's gonna look very vibrant, very bright, and quite nice in HDR. The HDRI, the HDR intelligence does a really good job. So I give it a complete pass. Now, obviously, if you don't want to be switching between HDR and non-HDR all the time, this might not be the monitor for you, but the HDR mode is quite nice in game. All right, moving into colors, there's a bunch of cool things and quirks with this. This hits 95% of the DCI-P3 color space, which is great if you are a photo or a video editor. However, there are some quirks with this. Let's get into them. First, this can output 10 bits of color. This is not a natively 10-bit panel. This is an 8-bit plus FRC or frame rate control to then output that 1.07 billion colors. That is 10-bit color. But let's talk about that. You can't actually output 10 bits of color at 165 Hertz. You guys saw that if you watched my unboxing. I did an unboxing and kind of initial test of this thing, and there I wasn't able to output 10 bits of color. And the reason is this thing has 165, 144, 120, and 60 Hertz basically in the settings. That's the different levels that will come up in Windows for you guys. Now, if you want to do 10 bits of color, you have to change it to 120 Hertz. Now, it is good that it's not 60, because when I was going through and testing this, I was like, oh, I really hope it's not 60 Hertz. But yeah, it was 120, so you are losing about 45 frames. However, it's kind of annoying, but it's not a huge deal. At least you're still getting high refresh rate rather than doing a 60 Hertz, but that is something to note. So if you do want to get 10 bits of color, you got to put it down to 120 Hertz. All right, the contrast ratio is typical for an IPS panel at 1000:1. Now, during testing for backlight bleed and IPS glow, they were not prevalent at all during the test, which is great to see. We do expect that. at almost $600 for a 27-inch monitor. We definitely expect that. This is a premium price point. However, definitely full pass with that. All right, response time and ghosting, let's talk about it. This hits a 2 millisecond gray to gray response time, which is really good. And the ghosting is very, very minimal, on par with some of the best LG monitors out there, which is saying a big thing because LG is pretty much the king of IPS monitors. But obviously BenQ does quite a good job with theirs. Now, let's talk about this because a lot of LG monitors, in fact, I think almost all of them, will say a 1 millisecond gray to gray response time. And how could the ghosting on this one be the same or almost exactly the same as an LG? Well, let's talk about it. First, a little bit of a quirk. There's a lot of quirks with this BenQ monitor. You cannot actually go in and change the response time settings. So a lot of times they'll have off, normal, fast, and then fastest or faster or whatever. Now, because there is no change of this, it will keep your response time at 2 milliseconds gray to gray all the time. Whereas on like an LG or basically any other monitor where you can change the response time settings in off or normal, it might be doing 4 milliseconds gray to gray. Whereas in the fastest setting, you are getting that 1 millisecond. However, it usually causes pixel overshooting and inverse ghosting. So really, it's a tactic that they use to then be able to market their monitors as a faster gray to gray response time. So that's why basically all of the fastest response time settings on monitors will cause some sort of artifacting or inverse ghosting, pixel overshooting, something like that. Whereas this monitor doesn't have any response time settings, so it's always locked to that 2 milliseconds. So don't let the marketing fool you. This is as good as the best LG monitors out there, best IPS LG monitors out there. So yeah, quite good with ghosting. All right, menu system and controls. I got a lot of mixed feelings about this, but let's talk about it. There is a dedicated power button. There is a dedicated input button. So if you have DisplayPort, HDMI, whatever, there's a dedicated button for that. And then there's a dedicated HDRI button. And then to basically go through all of the menu and such, there is a toggle joystick. So that is really nice. Basically, when you go through anything in the menu, you're just gonna be using that joystick. That's how you open it up and everything. So that is good. Now that is located on the right side behind the monitor, as is the power and input button. The HDRI button is on the front of it, which does look nice. But let's go over it. One thing I do like, I like having all of the HDR, I like having the input, and I like having the dedicated power button. They're each easy to find and get to. They have the joystick in the middle between the input and the power button, so you always know which one is which. The joystick is nice and it functions nicely. However, the menu system in itself doesn't have a lot of options. It has less than many other monitors, and it is definitely more confusing than other monitors. There's a little bit of a learning curve. It's not huge, but you're kind of like, where is this? How do I get here? It's not quite as good as something like LG, which does have the best in the industry, but I would say even Dell is a little bit ahead, and I would say even Scepter is a little bit ahead of this one, although the Scepter one doesn't look as nice. So the actual menu system itself is a nice like orangey tone on this one. It definitely looks better, but it's not quite as functional as like Scepter's, which is a little bit more basic and like easier to find things. So not really that big of a deal, but something to know. All right, VESA compatibility. This is VESA compatible with 100mm by 100mm VESA mounts. I definitely would recommend getting a monitor arm for this thing if that's what you're into, because this thing only weighs 11.4 pounds, which is heavy for a 27-inch, but for getting a monitor arm, you can get a very nice monitor arm for under 50 bucks that could hold this thing. In fact, I'll have one linked below for Amazon for the US, UK, Canada, and international. One that I've tested a lot with 27-inch and even 34-inch ultrawide, so I will have that link below to Amazon as well. But yeah, VESA compatible with 100mm by 100mm VESA mounts. All right, now the internal speakers. This is actually a really, really good speaker system. There are two 2-watt speakers forward facing, actually on the front of it, on the monitor's chin. It makes a huge difference with how good they sound. And then on the back of the monitor, you actually see the subwoofer. It is a 5-watt subwoofer. There is legitimate bass in this system, which is nuts. Now, I would recommend you changing the sound profiles over in the menu system because it changes the sound a lot, a huge amount. However, they sound fantastic. The music or gaming or whatever you're doing is actually forward facing because it's in that speaker grill on the front. This makes a massive difference with just listening to music, YouTube videos, anything like that. Things actually sound good, whereas before, monitor speakers were kind of basically there as a utility, whereas these actually sound good. And honestly, unless you're gonna spend over $150 on dedicated speakers, I wouldn't buy speakers. I would just use these because these are as good has $150 speakers. You're probably gonna have to go at least 150, but probably 200 or more to get better sound. But yeah, I was really blown away with the speakers. Absolutely the best monitor speakers I have ever heard. All right, now the ports. This has two HDMI 2.0s, one DisplayPort 1.4, a 3.5mm audio out, a USB Type-B upstream, and then two USB Type-A downstreams. That is pretty cool to have those USBs in there. Makes it easy to put some like back RGB on there or plug in your mouse or really whatever you want to. That's just super cool and makes it a little bit nicer and just feel a little bit more premium. All right, now the stand and build quality. Overall, it's built very well. I like the design of everything. It has nice integrated cable management in the stand that does work well. It has a nice cable cover for the back of it, which doesn't really matter, but it just, again, adds a little bit of premiumness to this monitor. Besides that, it has height adjustability, tilt, and swivel. Now, there's no rotation, which I find kind of weird because this monitor definitely is gonna be bought by some creatives, which are gonna want to be able to rotate it vertical. However, if you want that, just get the monitor on my link below. For under 50 bucks, you'll be able to do that and any other adjustments you want. Overall, for the price tag of 600 bucks, is this monitor worth it? Well, if you're okay and want that HDR experience in game and want to switch between those, if you want fantastic internal speakers and a wide color gamut to be able to do color accurate work or something else that needs color accuracy, I would say absolutely this monitor is amazing for you. Again, if you want to check it out, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. I do got you guys, but yeah. It was really cool using this monitor, especially because it felt like it was definitely made for gamers that want to game in HDR with that HDRI, which is constantly changing, which is actually very cool in game. But when you want to turn it off, 250 nits, color accuracy, editing videos and stuff, it just felt like it was made for me, where someone that is editing videos, photos, and then going right into gaming, turning HDR on, I don't know. It felt very purpose-built, and the speakers were also a very nice touch. So yeah, overall the experience was really, really great with this thing. And I honestly was kind of not expecting much out of this monitor just because BenQ's specs never blow you away. They always seem like they're a little bit behind, like they had 2 millisecond graded gray rather than 1 millisecond. But again, that's because they don't have the different response time settings, which yeah. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video and it helped you out, help me out and throw a like below. And if you want to check out the unboxing, it'll be somewhere here. I did a full unboxing and initial test review. Not review, just unboxing and initial impressions review. Not review, I keep saying review. This was Type C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.